Welcome back to the latest episode of the Life Lid podcast. I'm incredibly blessed and lucky today to get the opportunity to sit down and have a chat with a man who is incredibly impressive. He spanned a 24-year career in the Australian Defence Force, the majority of which spent serving in one of our top-tier Special Forces units, the 2nd Commando Regiment down in Sydney. He's got deployments to Somalia, Iraq, East Timor, Afghanistan with Special Operations Task Group, or SOTG. Probably a few more that we're not allowed to talk about, and unknowns to me. He's a father. He's had his own battles with mental health, the loss of friends through suicide and on operations. Survived a helicopter crash in Afghanistan as well. So he's got an incredible amount of experience, and I'm very blessed to be able to take the opportunity to sit down and have a chat. So please give a warm welcome to my friend, Wes H Hennessey. Wes, thanks for joining me, mate.
Great to be here, Jacob.
Yeah, I was much appreciated for driving all the way from Toowoomba.
It was a little drive, and as we were talking just before the cast, I'm never impressed now coming back into cities and traffic.
No.
I just don't know how people, I understand that people need to live where they need to live, but, it's just the hours out of a day and the built-up frustration. Whether it be for me, you know what I mean?
The traffic itself, I don't understand how traffic works. Like, we've got a speed limit. Everyone should be going the same speed. I think it's mostly merging. Like, everyone sits in that slow lane on the left, so people can't find an end to get on. Like, if everyone just moved over one lane, people could seamlessly get on, and we wouldn't have traffic unless we had an accident.
The funniest thing is the different standards and way that people drive in different states, and then different areas of each state. So, because I travel around so much, I notice a real big difference. As in, you'll be somewhere and people won't let you merge, or people cut you off, or people are honking or whatever. But
it's a fucking nightmare.
I don't know how people do it.
And then you add the rain to it, and everyone drops 10 Ks. Like, they did a risk assessment. They made it that speed because that's safe in all weather conditions. That's what they did. Yeah. Why are you second guessing it? Fuck, mate, it does my head in. Honestly, you've been away a bit though.
So a few years ago, myself and who's become a good friend. So he's not an ex-military guy. He's just someone I got acquainted to. And we started discussing some different business ideas probably as far back as almost 3 years ago now. And they were to purchase, first of all, to purchase a large cattle operation via some investors' money. So we're talking, north of 10 to 15 million.
Oh, geez.
And because the investor we had on the hook at the time, that needed to be in Victoria. That's what's taken me to Victoria now. And we went on and off, as in through the process of expressions of interest. And, when you're looking at properties of that size and nature, there's a lot of detail you need to put in behind each potential, even the thought of, purchasing. So going through that full expression of interest process. In regards to, what stock's on there, what plant and equipment, machinery, like just everything. So we did that on several properties, none of which, none of which we purchased. And that was, 24, 23, all mainly through 2022. And on the back of 2022, there's just a series of things that happened. One, we lost the investor, and we just weren't getting some hooks in. But also then he had one of his nieces who was quite young, died of leukemia. And there's just a few, personal issues that we both sort of had going on, significant at the time. So we just sort of parked it. And then, then last year I just went over, did a bit of work with a couple of mates in Western Australia because I just wanted to get back and work.
Yeah.
I find it so much rewarding. That year was all more that entrepreneurial stuff and blah, 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 and big pie in the sky, which is, what we're aiming for. And if you don't aim high, rah, rah, rah. But I felt like, one, we both needed a break. But two, I really just wanted to get back to just doing some work again, if you know what I mean, where you still have to think about what you're doing, but not really, so more that just get back and do stuff. yeah, and then fast forward to the start of this year, which is coming back to your question. So several different things that sort of, he'd been working more so in behind the scenes and a couple of other business projects. And they're broken down into, there's some contracts for Greening Australia. There's some engineering components of a business with some kennels that we're taking off, and some pastoral lease and pastoral management stuff. It's sort of the three categories you'd break it down into. So we made the decision where everything was sort of looking, at the right time, to go down there as into Victoria, and to, really confirm that, everything was going to be right. And we're at that stage now. So I've signed on, and we're moving to Victoria.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I would have liked to stay in Southeast Queensland, but also I'm more at the stage of my life I want to go to where, like we're talking about before with you going to Canada.
Yeah.
It's more, this is what I want to be doing. Where can I do it, and where do the opportunities lie?
Yeah.
Like I'm about lifestyle now, and I've been around good people, so where I live, even though, like I said, I'd love to stay in Queensland, it really becomes secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. So does that tie into the 7 horses thing? Because I noticed that's your handle. It's not Wes, like mine's just my name. Where did 7 horses come from?
Yeah, no, good question. So basically I wanted to put a brand to myself, and it's sort of gone through different iterations of what that would actually be.
Yeah.
But right now, really, to be honest, it is a business, like it's a structured business, but there's all that's behind it at the moment, is the brand itself and myself. We were coming back to some of those business ideas that we're working through. There was a component of a plan when we were really going to tie that into a component of the cattle operation, or cattle and lambing, or whichever component, but that ag operation to be then a component of that would be heavily nested within would be the 7 horses go idea, which was when we're going through those evolutions to have some like a farm stay. If you think dude ranch, but I don't like that term, but but that sort of thing where people like really notice such a difference when you can pull people out of the city and out of those environments. I think so many people are just bundled up because they're inside a city. There's no release for them, and a lot of them don't even realize that. Like we were talking about before, when you get up, everything's hustle and bustle. You go out and you got to drive 2 hours. There's just so much static here, and when you take them away from that and give them an opportunity. So what's proven, let's look at the science. So what's proven is, outdoors is proven. Being around animals is proven. And when I say proven, copious and numerous amounts of proper surveys on the psychological effect of when someone is living in a outdoors area. And when I say outdoors, I'm talking very rural, country, mountains. When they have more interaction with animals, that's, dogs, horses, cattle, whatever, just being around animals, sunlight, and when I say exercise, not that we'd be doing actual exercise, it's more doing physical activity, which is exercise, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, physical exertion.
Yes, exactly. So rather than, going to an office block and sitting behind a computer all day, they're just doing some basic physical chores and jobs. So the intent was to use those stables and create these week-long blocks. Now, we may still get to that. I've just shifted direction a little bit at the moment, and that is, we want to get our own place and get these other businesses moving along a bit more, and then that may then enable to do the other things what I want to do. What I don't want to do, and no offense, because there's a lot of ESOs, as in ex-service organisations, different charities, different .orgs out there doing, good things. But to me, there's also literally 1,000 odd doing nothing that claim they're doing something. So it'd have real effect in the veteran community. There's a component of that there. And to do that, I'm not ever going to do it unless I can do it properly and totally under my terms. Like I think too many of them are, just subscribe to they're just not facilitated with enough depth, and it takes money basically. So when you're there knocking on DVA's doors or someone else's doors, and you'd see it, across social media, you've got people asking for, the same money from the same groups of people, the same this every day. It's like we're actually taking off our own people to give back to our own people. It doesn't make sense to me. So, if I go down that road, which the aspiration probably isn't as strong as it used to be, but, I'd still like to do something there. Otherwise, I'll just quietly continue to do like what I do now in the background.
Yeah.
In regards to that. But, yeah.
Yeah, awesome, dude. I think that's a great idea. Trying to get people sort of, even though it's a bit menial labor, just getting even to something more simpler where people don't have to overcomplicate with everything else that goes on in the world. They can just focus on one simple task, whether that's plowing that field over there or, moving the horses to this stable from that stable. Something really simple that they can do with their hands that they don't have to overthink. So I think we definitely spend a lot of our time in this day and age with social media and the news and everything else going on. We've just got so much happening all the time. People don't get to just slow down and do something simple. Like I know when I first got out, I ended up going farming, contract harvesting with some family out west.
Oh, awesome.
I got fat, I sat on a tractor for 16 hours a day.
Fat and happy, mate. There's a reason there's the expression fat and happy. Like I've gotten fat since I've been away because I've been in training as much. Yeah. But I'm so much happier.
Yeah, it's good.
Like, and when I call myself fat, it's probably not what other people call themselves fat. Yeah. But I was like, but it's like, I think there's a lot of merit to that as well. Like you just feel more relaxed. But anyway, sorry, you're saying?
No, it was good. It was good for me to have something where I could almost switch off. And I know my cousin's going to be pissed because there was some incidents with the tractor. We lost an auger. It was great. It's come bouncing off as I was driving through the paddock. It was good. But it was good to have something where I didn't have to do PT twice a day. I didn't have all these rules and regulations. I could sit there, I could put some music on, and just sort of zone out a little bit and just relax and actually get a chance to sort of decompress. Yeah, it was good.
And the other thing I find about being in the country and country people is, things are just so much more real. Like when I was working, like sort of the corporate executive world there for 2 years, I was working for a defense aerospace company, and it took me a little while to work out why I felt additionally so much more tired, and I was like, and wasn't working hard, as in there was no physical component of it, and what I ascertained it was you have to act. There's a portion of your day which you're acting, as in you literally can't be your natural self. So if I'm in Saudi Arabia, doing, and we're talking lots of money, deals all the time, tens and tens of millions. So you're walking around in suits, it's, watching the P's and Q's, and you're very much, whining and dining and facilitating people to get them to be thinking, of why they should be doing business. It's like this big sell, obviously. So if you've got, and within that environment, when you have the product and the product's superior, a lot of those countries are still in relationships. So you've got to be a certain way, and you're always really fine tuning, that relationship with those people. And I find, even though I wasn't being that much not myself, but I was finding that was just literally exhausting me, especially when you're dealing with people that you may not really want to particularly be dealing with. Whereas in the country, people say, how you going? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking good, mate. No, I'm fucking tired, mate. So you're just more like, this is how I feel. Yeah. Not like, oh, no, we're very good today, and how are you, sir? So it's just those little subtleties. But when you do that all day, every day, I just found it draining. Yeah. As opposed to, as you were saying, when you went out onto your mate's property, and when I've worked on, numerous different properties and places, I just find when I'm in that environment, like more in that blue collar work environment or country environment, so much more relaxed.
Yeah.
Because you can just say it how it is, do it how it is, and you either do your job and you're good at it, or you're not. There's not this little wish-washiness, like, where you always feel like you're like being like, not micromanaged, but, like, where's that email, or where's this, or can you send that report in? There's just all this other shit in the background.
Yeah, someone's always looking over your shoulder in some facet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just starts taxing you. Well, I certainly found it with myself. So it's just personal experiences like that. And then when I finished that, when I went out on the station, because I just had a gutful, and I realized like what that did for myself. And then a couple of years later, I consulted, well, initially because it's a volunteer organisation, volunteered for Disaster Relief Australia. Jeff Evans, who's the CEO there, who's a former commando, he's a very good mate of mine. Then after those really, really bad bushfires, they needed some additional people, and I sort of went off and helped them for a little while, and then ended up consulting to them. And I I sort of found the modelling there of having, because they were mainly veterans, there's emergency services and other people, but to pluck a figure, probably 70% of those volunteers were veterans, and that's their modelling because they come with additional skills and stuff. And I found doing that, where I just sort of to run this modelling over these week long, just little things of how we'd all get up of a morning and eat breakfast together and go around the table and ask how everybody was. And then just seeing the difference of those people when they would do some laborious work through a week period. And that's why these, like a weekend's help, but there's actually like a period of time to it, and a weekend's not long enough to have a lasting effect. Anyway, and then also doing the laborious work and then seeing them help people in that emotional transaction. So I learnt a lot from that, and it sort of took. And then when I realised that I was actually doing the modelling, because I didn't set out to do that, then I really started to sort of watch and fine tune what I was doing. So it's that I'd like to now transplant into the ag sector. But like I said, I've just deferred that again at the moment because I'm just not ready to do it. Yeah. And I don't sort of do things unless I'm going to do them, 100%.
Yeah.
So I want to get ourselves, properly set up first and get the other business humming. Yeah. And then there's full intent to, hopefully and not a lot either, because it's quite taxing, to do, a couple of weeks here a year and a couple of weeks there a year. And also when you're in these environments that I'm in now, there's so much more opportunity and scope for that, as in the people, we've got literally tens of thousands of acres in Victoria of the most, beautiful, like the hillsides and the this. And that's one thing I do love about Victoria. There's just, the landscape, the freshwater streams and things like that. You often think, you see a postcard of a different country, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great, that kind of landscape as well. It's one of those things I think most of us, it sucks having to go out bush and sleep on the dirt and whatnot. When you're in the army, they take all the fun out of it. But the one thing I always appreciated was the lack of light pollution. You go out there, you can look, you can actually see the stars. You are out in nature. It's actually, I don't know, it's wholesome. It feels good, even though you might get fucked over and have to do some shit you're not real keen on. It's nice being out there. So if you get to do that in a civilian sense as well, it's great.
The point you bring up, I listened to this thing the other day, and it was just after I was standing outside one night. And then coincidentally, I think it was Joe Rogan, but I also then listened to it on a podcast like a week later. So coming back to these theories of mine that I've that I think of, and then I'll investigate a little bit and see that there's the actual science there.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying, the science of outdoors, the science of animals, blah, blah. So the stars. I don't know, it's hard to explain. I've said this on a couple other podcasts, but I've always had this funny relationship with stars, and it comes from soldering. So, lying outside of a night time, and because you brought it up, but, the ability or how much more the stars you can see. And then I just, like I said, I don't know how to explain it. I just started this funny relationship with the stars. It was this really sort of piece I got from them, and it just put me into like a deeper component of thought. So then the other day, the other night, sorry, I was standing outside, you can see the stars and it's dead quiet. And as you know, people in the city sometimes will make silly statements. They're like, oh, there's no stars. Like, the stars are there, they can't see them. We all know that. But then I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. And it's another thing that, like, watching a campfire, watching the ocean, lying there or sitting there and looking at the stars and just allowing ourselves to just let go of everything else and literally be in that moment, whatever you want to call it, is extremely like relaxing. And the way he was describing it is like how, people now have like lost that. It's another thing they've lost. They've lost that experience. like that has been stolen from society, and that there's a large portion of society that in a general week would go by and they're not going to go outside because they can't in the city. Like you might see a couple of stars, but you know what I mean? It's nowhere near the same. So they don't have those experiences, but importantly, they don't have what those experiences like provide back to them. And the other comment that you made about, you know, when we're soldiers and you're sleeping on the ground and just earthing, like literally just lying in the dirt, like it actually neutralizes your body. And again, that's a fact.
Yeah.
You know, we're an electrical, you know, inside us is there's circuitry. And, you know, when you go outside, I've done this on a few professional camps I've run for footballers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd get them all to take their shoes off and walk along on the dew ground.
Mm.
And like anyone who does that, you'll find yourself different afterwards.
Yeah.
And like I've only just started, I sort of, you know, when you forget about things to do.
Yeah.
And I only was doing that again last week. Like I hadn't done it for a few months. And I was getting a bit like edgy.
Yeah.
And then I went outside and I was just like, and the ground is like freezing fucking cold.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, -2. My feet were like crunching along in the grass.
Yeah.
But I was like standing there, and after I got rid of the like, holy fuck, that's cold. But I was standing there, and you just feel this the circuitry reset itself. You know. So anyway, you know, there's a bunch of little things like that, and that's all I'd like to, you know, get doing with these groups of people again is just help people reset a little bit. You know, it doesn't need to be so structured, and that's the problem when you've got like a weekend. You know, it's like, oh, we've got to get up and do this and got to get and do this. It's like, get up, have breakfast, and it was all the little things like we'd group cook every morning.
Yeah.
You know, and that's providing. And when you provide for each other, like if you just see how quick the group forms and how cohesive they are, and then ever so occasionally, not always, but not also that, you know, there'd be like 1 or 2 people, and you just know that no matter what happens this week, they're never ever gonna like, they're just not ready to sort of form into the group. You know, and that happened occasionally, and I'd identify that early, and not abruptly or rudely or anything, but I'd just remove them.
Yeah.
I think that's another big thing now in society. It's like we just, you know, yes, we all need to get along and we all need this, but there's people that just aren't suited for something. Like, just remove them.
Yeah.
Like, because then they just jeopardize the rest of the group, you know. I guess, you know, we came from an environment in our former lives who have, you know, fortunately we were generally able to do that. But now, you know, I think that's another problem with society is, you know, there's being tolerant, there's being empathetic, and then there's now just like, I don't know how you'd call it, like unnecessary acceptism. It's like, you know, if they're abrasive and they're this, or they're so alternate, or they're that they're just upsetting everyone else. Why the fuck, you know, like, go on, you know.
Yeah. Go do your thing over there.
I think too many people are scared to do that now.
Yeah. I think the world's definitely got a lot softer. And I think in some ways it's good, but in a lot of ways it's probably negative. There's probably too much. Let's just let anything go, and there's nobody really, you know, with a rudder to the boat. We're just kind of whatever fucking happens. You know, I'm all for letting people do whatever they want, so long as it doesn't, you know, impact other people and hurt them. But I think we've gotten too far away that feelings are becoming so much more prevalent and important in people's lives than like objective facts and you know, the way that the world is.
Yeah, but it's destroying us. Like I see it. I actually get upset. Yeah, before, I can't remember what we were talking about just before we came on, but, you know, as you know, I do a little bit of media nowadays, not social media, you know, do a little bit with Sky, do every now and then I write an article in the newspaper. I haven't done that for a little while. But anyway, I find myself keeping much more across current affairs. It's something I've just, you know, but also I've found some weeks, I literally will just have to not do anything because it just starts eating away at me. And I've found in the last few years, and I think everybody does, but so many people are just quiet about it or scared about it. You know, it's just been a disproportionate shift, you know, over to this side. You know, like if I told you a few years ago that, you know, there's going to be men that are legally allowed to take hormone tablets and breastfeed children to men, you know, that to me is absolutely fucking absurd and categorically wrong. And that just highlights our society nowadays. You know, if I told you that this was going to happen or that was going to happen, you know, like why have so many groups? Like I'm not transphobic, I'm not homophobic, I'm none of those things. But why is the trans community allowed so many days, weeks, and months, and given so much, precedence on certain things. Why do our children, that's something I speak strongly about. Why do our children have to go and watch these shows? Like, why have counselors? And there's just all these things you can see where I just get like, my God, like what's happening? And like when you mentioned standards, Defence Force standards have gone. So I just see all these little things, that just seem to be eroding us as a society. And again, we've always had people who are into different alternate sexes and this and that. That's been forever. Like, read the crazy shit the Romans and that Vikings used to do. I mean, they were doing fucking crazy shit, right?
Yeah. Greeks as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Greeks, yeah.
But they were doing it. Like, it's not a new thing, but they didn't have a week for it or a month for it or this for it or that for it. Like what do you do? I guess put it like this. What happened to the word when it used to be, your private life?
Yeah.
Like you'd ask me a question, I'm go, that's private. And like, before, to be totally transparent, like before we came on, you're like, is there anything out of bounds? I'm like, there's nothing out of bounds. But if I don't want to talk about anything, I was like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's like now, so rather than just you do what you want to do, and that's your private life, and other people respecting that, that's the other part I don't like. It's like being forced upon us. Like, why do we have to accept that, or why do I have to watch that? Why can't you just be, what you want to be? Like, I couldn't care what your sexuality was. Like, I would not be not sitting here if you were like this, that, or anything else. I couldn't give two fucks. I treat people how they treat me. And I think if we all just respect each other, but I just don't understand why with so many of these issues nowadays, it feels, and I think often it is, being like pushed upon us.
Yeah.
And I just get really wrapped up sort of, I guess, in that, the current affairs and this like just enormous, disproportionate cultural shift over the last few years. I just find it's really, really affecting us as a society in a negative way. Look at what's happened in sports, and then they allowed that and then quickly reversed it. It's like we're making quick decisions and then we go, oh, fuck, and then we want to change them back.
Yeah. There's no forethought in things. It's all very instant gratification. It's all, nothing's really thought through to the fullest extent for sure. But I wonder sometimes whether it is so prevalent or whether it's just things like social media where everything gets amplified. You talk to most people, they don't care one way or the other. Like the vast majority of face-to-face human interactions you have, people don't give a fuck. They don't care one way or the other. Like, do what you want to do. But if you jump on social media, it's everywhere all the time, and it's jammed in your throat. I wonder if it's just the fact that all of it's just getting amplified in that.
I think there's definitely, you're dead right. There is definitely a very large proportion of not almost every aspect of our life that is amplified through social media. And the other term that you used before too, which is very true and also is very counter in this whole argument, is that instant gratification.
Yes.
So if you just, again, let's look at the science, let's look at the surveys. I posted something, just a few things that I commented on in the last few weeks. We've got the average age of like young teenage girls Googling pornography now, I think it's down to 13 or 14. That to me, that just is absurd. We've got so many different components of the algorithms that are affecting the psychology of young children through TikTok has been proven. As you know, currently at the moment with the Australian, I can't remember the lady's name, but the argument she's having, with Meta, about the privacy laws and etc. across those platforms. Like sometimes I just wish I could wake up and not give two fucks about any of this stuff. But the problem is once you start going down that rabbit hole, like people are like, oh, how did you end up doing that? It's like, well, I think once you start having a bit of a voice and you comment on things, then people just, then they go to you and you can just get into that band. Like I say no to more things now than I do like say yes to, you know what I mean? But there's, without sounding, or the risk of sounding negative, because I'm conscious of that, I don't think I'm negative. I think I'm realistic and I'm just concerned about where we're going as a society, and I think there's a rapid degradation in so many of our just, traditions and cultures. But importantly, the traditions and cultures that used to keep us, on the straight and narrow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned you do interviews with Sky and the news, and you commentate, sort of a social commentator, if you will, these days. How have you found that transition from going from, to Commando, where protected identity status, everything's very secretive, us veterans know a little bit more than most people, but most civilians are not going to know a lot about it. How have you found that transition from being so secretive to now sort of in the public eye to a degree?
Yeah, to be honest, I found it really difficult. It's just such like ingrained to like I'd go in to get what's an example? Into a store to do something, and they're like, "Oh, can you give us your name and email?" And my instant bite back, and this is when I first got out, I'd be like, "What do you want that for?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Like literally, and then like you realize you're just being a weirdo. They're like, "Oh, it's just for this," you're like, and then I'll like turn around and walk out of the store, looking around, like you're getting a bit too little crazy about it all. And then a few years later, I've come back a notch too, but when it came all out, or when I basically got put in a position. And the position was this. I wrote, actually, I can't remember exactly what media it was, whether it was an article or something, but it was after the Berridon report. And, we need, when I say we, the Special Operations community of Australia needed some persons, who could speak and articulate our thoughts and feelings. And we needed to fight back. I believe and so did many others, believed that Australians need to see and feel that we're not all this, out of the Berridon report, and we'll sort of half park that. But, it's quite evident that there's some bad apples in SOCOM.
There's bad apples everywhere, though.
Exactly. But it was how it was delivered, starting at the Chief's Defence Forces address, where we all thought that he certainly had like tarnished all of us. There was no defense for the 99% of us who had done amazing work. And when you look over the protracted period of that war, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, coming back on track. So it was when all that came out, I was asked, and that's what I'm saying, I can't remember exactly who it was or what it was. But basically the only way that they would write that article or have me sort of that present in it was, in a full name. And I remember just sitting there for like days, so I had a real quandary with it. And then it was just like, well, you know what, like really, if someone wanted to fire me or all that, who boo, you boo fucking stuff, like, you know what I mean? You can find anyone nowadays.
Yeah.
So I'd been out for a few years, and I just made that decision to go across that line. Because even then, like before that, a couple of podcasts I'd done and sort of some radio interviews and whatever, it's this guy hates,
Yeah.
And that was all that was mentioned. And I worked out quickly that actually wasn't not that I had this goal to go off and be this or do that, but that being anonymous doesn't really help anything, because no one cares about an anonymous person because they're not real. Like, so people really want to know more about who you are. So yeah, it was when I made that step, and then after making that step, then a lot of things just naturally transitions. You get, because people can see who you are, then you become a real person. And that's when we developed a bit more of a profile and sort of just went from there. But like I said, I didn't really have any, intent to go and do this and go and do that. It's just after speaking on a couple of things, and then also, you get a lot of, I was getting like a lot of very positive feedback. And from all sorts of different people. Like even nowadays, sometimes, especially when I was doing the radio here in Brisbane, often you're speaking a lot about the crime and stuff in Brisbane. I'd get a lot of like, police officers both serving and forming, write to me, as in send me DMs, and thank me for, because, as you know, when you're serving and in these job role functions, they're not allowed to speak up. They're not allowed to do this. So when anyone out there, I guess who's got a little bit of credibility and some runs on the board, is speaking some common sense about them for them, they very much respect that. So it sort of just went along, like that. And then in particular with Sky, I've done several with a few different people on Sky, but now I have to commonly appear with Erin on the Erin show, and she's like, just the absolute, you know, when you sort of see, like I knew of her and we'd spoken a couple of times, but when you really get to know these people, she's like, you know, just an amazing lady. She's very down to earth. She's very professional. And I just love her for her patriotism and to stand up for what she stands up in. And then we'd done a couple of things and we just had that conversation. She's like, what do you want to do? And like, I didn't know like literally what I wanted to do in regards to that. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, do you want to just come on every week? And when I thought about it, I was like, well, what I'd like to do is, yes, it's that, but not just talking, because there's so much negative about defense. And I just didn't want to be that person. And every time, like when I go to talk about that, I always like preclude it with like, you know, I'm not on here to bag out defense. I'm talking about the defense issues because I love the defense so much. And everyone, like, I mean, it's not an argument. It's quite clear how much it's like gone downhill in so many different areas. You know, even now, I've still got a recruitment problem, retention problem. You know, every capability and resource platform is, you know, either over time, over budget, or under delivered. And that's that pitter patter. Like, that's why I just rolled that off. Like, I've said that on everything because it's true.
Yeah.
You can't argue against that. And then the Defence Force hasn't been managed well. And then when you look at the degradation that's happening now in regards to, you know, the recruitment standards being reduced, you know, continually, you know, and all those things just concern me. But, you know, when we had that discussion, I was like, you know, I'd prefer to talk, sort of come on more generally and just talk about, you know, current affairs. And, you know, when you want to talk defence, yeah, of course, we'll get, you know, some defence expert on, but it all sort of organically happened. And I just like where it's at now. Like some weekends I'll say, no, I can't do it. If I'm busy, I won't do it. You know, I was supposed to talk on Brisbane radio over the weekend, and I was like traveling and didn't know where I'd be, you know, so I just go no. But, you know, I think I've come to enjoy it, and I think I'll continue to do it as long as I think, you know, that I'm having a positive influence in whatever they're, you know, ask me about or calling people to check.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome, dude. That is a very big step to take out in that limelight, especially potentially having opinions and expressing opinions that aren't going to be super popular with a lot of other people, especially in the media that's you know, bought and paid by whatever pharmaceutical companies or whoever.
You'll always get haters. There's one thing, me and Sammy actually saw it. I can't remember. We made a joke about it. I'd just come off air with Aaron, and they did a thing on Twitter about, I can't remember what the topic was. It doesn't matter. But that's where we just have a laugh, like, with these people, because it's like, and there was a comment on Twitter or X, and it said, you know, who's Wes Hennessey, and like, who cares what he thinks anyway, or something like this, you know. And like, I literally like just had a laugh. We screenshot it and posted it. It's like, you know,
absolutely.
I'm like, yeah, I don't care, and who am I? Like, you know, like, and you'll always get, you know, haters, detractors, you know, like, I look at it like this. If you're spending time worrying about like what I'm doing or saying, like, you know what I mean, that says nothing about me.
Yeah.
That says everything about you. Like, if your thing is like, you know, this guy and that guy, you know, and I've had my fair share of them, and I'm just like, you know, if your time and effort is watching my every move and you know, podcasts like this and then making jokes, 'cause I'll screenshot shit and put up these memes, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, have a look at yourself. You're sitting in a basement, you know, doing this shit. Like, you're fucking like kidding me, mate.
Yeah.
You know, so to me now, it's just, like I said, it says, you know, absolutely everything about them, which none of it is good, and it says nothing about me.
Yeah.
So I just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. They don't know you. You know what I mean? They get a sound bite or, you know, a 10-minute thing with commercial breaks in between, and they're just spending their life on Twitter.
Oh, no,
like,
it's
commenting
funny
on shit. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Go out of the life.
Yeah.
Like, go outside, mate. Live some life, and then come back and we'll have a conversation.
Have you got, like, you would have got a little bit of like that since you've sort of stepped?
Little bits and pieces. I actually, when it came to, I didn't tell anybody I was getting into acting for quite a while, because the people whose opinions I value the most are mostly the boys, and I was like, I don't need to put it out there and just get hammered left, right, and center before I've made something. But I was actually very pleasantly surprised that even the jokes that were made, which I knew were going to come, were mostly positive jokes.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't, you know, you're fucking queer, like, in acting. It was more like, "Ah, see you on Home and Away." Like, blah. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it Home and Away. I don't care if you're out there, Home and Away. I'm ready."
Yeah.
You know, look, it was surprisingly positive, but you definitely get people that they tear you down. And I think one of the things you get, the internet sort of and social media definitely expounds on it, makes it much more visible. I think a lot of people are just talking shit behind your back.
Yeah.
For the most part. I've not had a single person come up to me in person and tell me shut the fuck up or whatever.
Yeah.
It's always on social media or behind your back.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I'm like, when you've got an anonymous account or you're sitting there and you're like doing this and like, like half these people know where I live, got my phone number, and they're like, this. I'm like, like really?
Yeah.
And I had a guy, and he was a former unit guy, and we'd had a bit of a falling out or whatever, and it was just kind of funny because I was like, and he wrote to me and called me some name or something, and I was just like, I didn't even respond. I was just looking at it like, you're a fucking commando, mate.
Yeah.
And you've got my phone number, and you're sending me a DM.
Yeah.
And that's what I go back to. Like, I'm like, that says everything about you. It says nothing about me. Like, if you can't pick up the fucking phone as a minimum and call someone, like if you want to be a 16-year-old teenage girl on media and write these little things, it's like even when someone disagrees with something and they'll write me something, like I've got, and especially when they, string two sentences together, I'll always respond to that comment. I'll always respond. I'm like, hey, thanks very much. I like your opinion. Yeah. And, but it's like, the other ones, it's like, but generally speaking, on social media, I've been like, when I look back, I think I've been just really, really fortunate. Most of my, significant interactions and people who've now become good friends and different little business things have all like come off there.
Yeah.
So I sort of, whenever there's that negative shit, I just look at that and just go like, whatever. Yeah. Like,
I like to
fucking go for it.
Oh, absolutely. My go-to response to the negativity is just have a blessed day. Yeah. That's it. And a thumbs up. Like, I don't care. Yeah. Say whatever you want, mate. It's fine. We don't have to agree. That's the beautiful thing of life. We don't have to agree.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. We can sit here and you can have a conversation about it if you want, and I'll absolutely entertain you. But if you don't like it, don't fucking listen.
But the other funny thing is, if I've got something, if I don't agree with something, like you just flick past it. That's the other thing. That's the other thing I sort of find funny.
Yeah.
Is the fact that they've got to sit on there and write this thing. And like when you say your thing, my favourite is always like, I just give them a thumbs up. I go, thanks, champ.
Champ.
Like the old champ is
good.
It's just the best. And then they'll like go off on a tangent. I'm like, block.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Like I have a couple of mates ask me and they'll ring me and they go, oh, mate. So I said, why are you responding?
Yeah, who cares?
And they're like, oh, because I'm like, mate, just block. Just block.
Yeah.
Like I don't look at that as a cheap way out, a weak way out, It's just fucking block them. Like what? You get zero of my energy. You get zero of my effort. I've been like called out for all sorts of shit, mate. I just look at them like, everyone knows that shit.
Yeah.
They try and make stories up about me. I'm like, that's common knowledge.
Yeah.
Like I said, like, what the fucking grow up? It's just, like I said, I don't know. I just find it funny. I was speaking to Steve, as in Commando Steve,
Yeah.
Because he used to be my driver, like, so we're in the same team.
Yeah.
And I always found it, when he sort of, became successful through, was the Biggest Fattest Loser or whatever it was.
Yeah, Biggest Loser.
Biggest Loser, sorry. Biggest Fattest Loser. Sorry.
Really lump it in there, bud.
Just fucking edit that one out. Anyway, I, we used to still talk and catch up every now and then. And, he was like, you know when you're sort of half starting to make it because these people just start saying shit about you.
Yeah.
Because there's people would say to him, that he was never in Commandos, he was never in this, or, and it's just like, what are you fucking talking about?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the other thing, like, they haven't even got the 5 minutes to do any, like, real research. It's just, anyway, it's enough on them.
Yeah.
But I just find it all sort of, half amusing. But, It is what it is.
It is what it is. I was talking to someone the other day about that saying. It's a very military saying, and we just laughed at how applicable it is to so many. Like it's got so much different meaning.
It
like
is what it is.
Just like it is what it is. Well, it is what it is. Yeah. You just have a laugh. Who cares?
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how have you found the transition then out of defence on the back end? How have you found adjusting, especially coming from,
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I went through, again, which is no secret, I went through some really, really, probably two periods when I look back that were really, really fucking bad, like dark, fucking drugs, alcohol, lots of bad shit. And they were probably a year or two apart or something. But, all in all, so I think when I first got out, because I kept busy and I was still in that sort of mindset, and I think when you then let that go a little bit, but there's normally, several triggers. So, if you look at my transition, it would be like the worst, like possible scenario, or not the worst possible scenario, but like one of the worst possible scenarios or perfect storms, or however you'd like to coin that. So my last tour was just on 13 months. So I did 2 tours back to back. So 2 complete different jobs, 6-7 months each in Afghanistan. Now, when I look back, I was given an option to take that trip. There were some senior people. I was running pretty hot at the stage. Then there's some senior people sort of like going, like they wanted me to go, and they knew I was the person to go. There probably could have been a couple other people that could have done that job at the time, but those couple other people were more lined up to follow on from me behind me as opposed to go then, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the unit as a whole, then on the back of that war, that there was just so many of the senior guys. We were fucking tired. We were still good to go, but you'll hear me use that term. We were running hot, so you're in this really high tempo. Levels really high, so really high per. But anyway, yeah. So when I come back from that, sadly, just before I left, I'd started an affair with a lady, and I was married at the time, and I was very happily married, and most beautiful wife, and that is one of my absolute biggest and hardest regrets of my life, which would make me upset. So I'll sort of skim over it a little bit.
Yeah.
But because of that, so that was happening. And then just before that, I'd never used any drugs in my whole life. Sorry to be categorical, I think I smoked weed literally like twice when I was like 13 or 14 as an experiment, but I'd never touched any other drugs. And I think it was a couple of years before that trip where I'd started to use drugs a little bit, I'd drunk heavy, but probably now drinking more and more that like drinking, like hard drinking. And just some other unhealthy things, again, when you look back, that I can now, sit here and, mano say that they were just, I wasn't traveling well, but still in a very much deniable state of how I was. And then, so when I come back, so now I'm at 24 years service, just finished a 13-month fucking deployment in Afghanistan, and I've landed. And I've decided to leave my family, put my discharge in. So if you have a look at combat indicators, and of someone who was, myself in that era, he's, a decorated Woe 1, without sort of blowing my own trumpet too much. I was quite a reputable person in the unit, and he's just literally come back and fucking thrown everything in the wind. Mm-hmm. So to me, I hold myself 100% responsible for that, but I do really, really wish that some of my closest friends and confidants and family like grabbed me then. Like I needed fucking help. And if someone grabbed me there, or if there was some other, and I was not an easy person to grab. Like I was very stubborn, I was very headstrong, and I was this fucking guy. But I needed to be grabbed. And if someone grabbed me then, like my whole next several years and where I am now even would be completely different. Like that was a really, really fucking turning point in my life. Which, from there, there's just so many not good things, rolled out of that, which, ended up in myself, leaving my family, and just going on, being up and down for like years. had several good jobs and maintained those jobs and was, very steady, but then also just went through some fucking really, really crazy dark patches. All of which, I really, really regret. I hurt myself a lot. I hurt some other people a lot, and they were, it was a bad time for me. And then, as I was saying, then about 2-3 years later, then after I was finished with defense aerospace, and I just wanted to get back on the land because I realized, and it took me sort of that long, not that I was on a bender for that long, but there was these periods, and I was like, I just need, this to get back to my core roots. And if you come back to when we were first talking, of doing that labor work. So I knew, you can get drugs anywhere. You can get fucking crazy women anywhere. You can drive fast anywhere. You can get alcohol anywhere. And it's all these common things, that become, tools for us when we're in this area. And because I've had this chat with 100 guys, and it's always the same sort of handful of demons, right? But so what I wanted to do is get some isolation. And the point I'm making is, you can get yourself into trouble anywhere, but I think certainly when you're, in more of a, country setting and working hard on the land, because everything else, all these other levels come down, and you're just like a lot less susceptible to certain things. So I put myself in that predicament, and, just worked hard for, several months or whatever it was. And then sort of, transition back to life, if that makes sense. Because I literally, a lot of people got upset with me because I just cut everyone away. I'm like, I don't think, if you're a mate of mine, you'll be there at the fucking end. I didn't talk to many people through that time. And I did all that deliberately. And I did the same thing the next time when I was in a really dark spot. I did basically put myself through a 90-day selection course.
Yeah.
Where I just meditated every day, did saunas, trained on a very strict diet, and had almost zero communication with people for 90 days because I just fucking boom, and it worked, But I wouldn't recommend that for everyone.
Yeah, it's pretty hard
because it was what I was doing. I was doing an hour stress positions a day and stuff. Jeez. Just really just fucking breaking my mind down.
Yeah.
To realize, just a hard reset, and after that, and I was just $1 million again.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that's what I say to everyone. It's if you're not well and you're not traveling well, and that's fine, but it's what you do about it, And we everyone's got shit. Everyone's got fucking history. Everyone's gone through this, that. There's these people that sit out there, they'll laugh at me when they're on social media going, "Oh, grind every day and 24." Fucking shut up, mate. Seriously, I don't believe you. Yeah. There's so many people out there. And that call themselves inspirational people. Someone will stop following them. You're just sitting there on social media because you know what algorithm works and you think that works. People don't give a fuck, mate. What people care about is, when you've gone through something traumatic, how you've overcome. Because everybody's going to if they haven't had something horrible in their life or multiple horrible traumatic events, they're fucking going to. Because that's life. We will all experience things. And we'll all experience things that are going to be exceptionally difficult to overcome. So what people want to know and feel inspired by is when someone just actually fucking shares that. Because there's no magic, recipe to this fucking thing called life. I find life hilarious half the time. Fuck, this shit's a fucking joke. When we first talked and you were I'm like, well, what's your show about? And you're the life lit. I'll be honest with you, Jacob. That's kind of what put the hooks into me. I was like, yeah, fucking life. We should need a podcast. Everyone's podcast is about life essentially, but this thing is literally fucking. You know what I mean? And that's one thing. In the last, especially probably the last several years. I've really just, I look at everyone differently. I'm a lot more tolerant. I'm a lot more empathetic. I still won't take fucking shit. Everyone gets a couple of chances. But if you're carrying on, I'm all are you okay, bro?
Yeah.
Because you're fucking super heated. Even just the other day, funny little story. I went to sell, we had a horse float, I wanted to sell it. And I was down in Victoria and I said to Samantha, my partner, I said, hey, Sammy, can you just contact a couple of the other horsey chicks we know, get your heads together, work out a price, and then just sort it out for me. They're like, no worries. And see, I didn't discuss a price or anything. The side story within the story is a joke, you know. So next minute they ring me up, like they had 400 phone calls in like 2 seconds because they put 20 grand on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe you think you should have put 25,000 on it. But anyway, that's another part. But anyway, the lady, coming back on point. So the lady who bought it, something happened. We're talking about the reg on the road with or something. Anyway, so rather than Sammy talking, I ended up talking to her on one of these phone calls. And she got on the phone and she was just totally escalated. Like, well, my daughter's in Timor doing it. Just started like carrying on. I'm just listening. I'm like, are you okay? And then she started like breaking down. She's like, oh, I've had an absolute terrible day. So here I am, like, this lady, sat on the float, like, had this big chop at me. Then she sends me back and I said, look, I'm going to hop off the phone. I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then I'm going to call you back. And she's still having a go at me. I just hang up. About a minute later, I get this lovely text message. 3 minutes later, the phone calls. She's like, hey, I just want to have a talk to you. And then next week, we're having this talk, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know why. It's just a silly little example, but, you know, like, I didn't know what was happening in her day. Everyone's, you know, just has so many things happen. And I think if we all are just a little bit more tolerant, but also you need to identify when you're having that shit day, it doesn't mean that you can like take it out on someone else. But I think often it's how you react. So because I reacted like that, rather than her escalating. So if you escalate, people are going to escalate.
Yes.
That's it just goes, and there's only one person can be the, you know, king in the castle, the highest person in the room.
Yeah, and it's going to be H every time.
So anyway, this time I won't back down. No. But so, you know, to do that, and then when you de-escalate or just don't say anything, you know, it defuses it. You know, whereas years ago, you know, I might have had a go at her and called her some names and hung up. And I think it's just a maturity thing, you know, but also society nowadays, you know, I think that's a lesson that we all just need to like take stock of. You know, like, again, look at the science, look at the stats. Mental health's gone up. There's less mental health facilities and access through both psychiatrists, psychologists, and permanent bedding. So that's a fact. That's across every state in Australia. But mental health, in a general terms, has decreased. So our overall mental well-being has decreased in every state in Australia. So what does that tell you? You know, it tells you fucking what it tells you, and it's not good. So, you know, I think that just plays into everything that we're seeing out there and how we act and react to each other, and that we all just need to, you know, wind it back one notch, you know. But yeah.
Manners definitely go a long way, and giving people space and trying to bring them back down is definitely something I think we should all be doing. Like you mentioned that mental health is going up. I think that's in every facet of life. I think everything is getting less and less healthy in one way or another. I think there's a lot of the child mental health issues, for instance. I'd say a lot of it comes down to things like diet and exercise and being outside. Like they're spending so much time on their phones, on the social media. I mean, I'm on it all the time as well. I'm definitely guilty of it. The fact that they're getting that constantly, they're seeing all these, you know, unachievable standards, you know, all these guys that are shredded, all these chicks that are looking amazing, 10 out of 10s, they're all filtered and whatnot. But then they're not eating healthy food, you know. Parents haven't got time. It's cheaper to get some Maccas on the way home and fill them full of these preservatives. They're not going out. They're not exercising and running around outside. Just all builds everything. I think if you took a few of those factors and lowered them down, eat some healthy food, you know, exercise, get outside and play, I think you'd see some of those mental health issues and the stress we have on that system come down. It's not going to eliminate it.
No, and you're 100% right. And again, let's look at the science. So they say that if doctors could prescribe 3 things only, it's exercise, sunlight, and like healthy and like diet. So they're prescriptions that they can't actually prescribe. But if, you know, the point being, if they could force that prescription, if you know what I mean, where you had to do, because if you go to a doctor and your fucking leg's infected or whatever, and they go, here, take some penicillin, you'll take that penicillin every day because you want the infection to go away. But if you went to a doctor and said this and they said you got to walk for half an hour every morning, the person won't do it.
Yeah.
So it's actually really funny when you look at, you know, our mindsets, and you're dead right with children. I mean, that's our worry. So yeah, me and you are on our phones a bit. Yep. Yeah. But we're also, have got developed minds.
Mm.
And just driving here now, this is what worries me. And you see, it's more exemplified, there's no kids walking home from fucking school where I live.
Yeah.
So whenever I come into any sort of built up area or whatever, but especially in cities, because there's a lot of, and because the time it was when I was driving here, every single fucking school kid and or person I saw walking on the side street, curb, waiting at a bus stop, whatever, on my way into Brisbane night, every single one of them, like 100%, had their head down on their phone, And this is the problem. So it's not that you spend half an hour on Instagram every morning or I do this. I've developed a routine to try and keep my phone use healthy. So we all need our phone now. That's a reality. Again, I'm a realist. You can talk about all this. Oh, well, get off your fucking phone. Like, yeah, no worries, mate. You cannot fucking survive without that phone nowadays. Well, technically you can, but if you want to do this and do that, you can't. Everything's on it and more will come onto it. But, so for example, the rules that I have for myself, so when I get up, I read the newspapers electronically on my phone. So I go through and read 2 or 3 newspapers, anything I want to comment on, I do that then and there, put that on Twitter, and then phone down. The other thing that I've only started to do recently, and I've found, like, when I say recently, like in the last year or so, I don't watch anyone's stories. Now, that might sound like a little like, oh, who gives a fuck? Well, I see like who watch it. Like I can't see all of them because there's thousands of them. But like it's the same people who go through and like they're watching stories like all the time. So I think watching those stories and you become really addictive into that feed of what that person's doing. So I found that decreased like a heap of time. And the other thing I've done is I've just deleted or unfollowed like just so many other accounts, as in there's lots of accounts I like to get a laugh out of, but I don't follow any of them.
Yeah.
Because then they're on your feed. So the account's there. If I want to go and watch this comedian do that, if I want to go and fucking look at this, I'll go and have a quick look at that. I even stopped following Honeybird out. Anyway.
They've got some great sales. That's what I'm there for. I'm just there for the sales team.
I just like to see what colours are in
Yeah,
season,
that's what I want to know. I don't know.
Like I'm not on there long. I just want to know. But I gotta laugh. I gotta laugh about that though because that was one. Because that was one unfollow on there,
and you stressed over it.
Like, and my thumb was hovering on Honeybird for probably like 7.5 minutes. It's the biggest unfollow I've ever had in my life.
Sammy's coming in. You're looking all depressed. Like, I just broke up with Honeybird out. I don't know if they'll take me back.
Well, I actually had a chat to her about it. And she's like, because there used to be this joke, because it was the last page of any of those sort of pages. I didn't follow any of the chicks or anything. Anyway, and I was like, and she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, I just unfollowed him. Even her, she's like, oh, seriously? Are you okay?
Oh, God. It makes me laugh. I can't help but think of the Carl Barron had a bit about it. He's like, you see attractive people, they're so attractive it makes you angry.
Yeah.
I have that all the time. Every time I scroll Instagram, I'll see everything I've seen and then it throws up some fitness model. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah.
How are you that? Oh, God. It's just...
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's funny. A lot of drugs, mate. That's how they're like that. I used to say it all the time and I was like, yeah, but and that's another thing. It's a good point, actually. Like, in all seriousness, you look at some guys, like, often the girls are in the limelight, as in young girls and women, how much they, social media, pushes them to, what's the word I'm talking, body portrayal and image.
Body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, there's actually a whole thing, there with guys as well,
Absolutely.
And it's like when you look at these guys, I don't know how many fucking drugs they take, but like they're on a lot. And I mean, that's a fact,
Yeah.
that, if you're walking around with 3% body fat, but again, there's guys that get like wrapped up like about that. Like, like I said, at the moment, I consider myself fat.
Yeah.
And, before when I was working again, I was getting up, I'd go to CrossFit every morning and I was like training hard. And, you definitely feel good about yourself when I'm like that. And I'm looking forward to getting back into that, daily training and that routine. It's just at the moment, I just haven't got, I'm too remote. I haven't got the facilities to do it. And people say, it's all excuses. Like, yeah, you know, there's little things I do every couple of mornings. So I've got a couple of kettlebells there. There's some basic exercises and stuff I do. But also when you're working hard, it's I don't need to do that, you know. But this whole, you know, there's people I know that are just so susceptible, you know, to these images that are out there, which just so fucking aren't real. And that's the other part of this whole like society and world. I'm just done with it, you know. Like it's so, you know, you feel so much more at ease and so much more relaxed when you literally start learning. And it takes a fucking while. And it also takes like a strong mindset to just not care about so much out there. Because when you see, it's not a conspiracy theory. You know, all these things we're seeing are put before us to make us feel something. You know, from where fucking things are in the supermarkets, like this all used to be a conspiracy theory. And now it's like people are starting to clue on it. It's not, it's real. So everything out there from when you're driving here, the signage in the streets, you know, why we need a new car, you know, what I need to eat. And when you learn what all that is doing, that it's all marketing, and you learn to not give a fuck about so many things, you're so much more relaxed, you know. And it's like, you know, I don't care if I'm a little bit, what I consider to be a little bit fat, you know. I don't care this day if I don't have a fucking perfect shirt on. You know, I don't care this day if I don't, you know. And I find yourself so much happier when you just learn to, you know, the mindset, navigate all through that, not be so, you know, susceptible to it. And I think the average person, which I think, you know, it's another huge issue nowadays, doesn't really truly realize how much, like every second, because there's just so much fucking information in front of us that they are being, you know, manipulated to think a certain way. And, you know, that's, you know, one reason why I'm, you know, so anti, particularly TikTok, because in regards to its algorithms and the fact of, you know, what's in the fine print, who owns the platform, you know, and it's just a cultural thing, which is just, you know, destroying so many young people's lives, literally.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it's terrible.
It's great for advertising. You can, like, I've got a TikTok account for this, and I get sucked into scrolling on it all the time because it is. But they've, like, even the algorithm on that, they've now changed the algorithm so that it takes into account how much time you're on before and after you post. So if you post in Ghost or set up an automated post, it just won't show you videos to fuck all people.
Fucking hell, see?
So you got to, so you got to jump on there for 10, 15 minutes and scroll through and like things and comment and whatnot to get your engagement up. And then you can post, and then you got to stay on for 10, 15, 20 minutes up. Like, and there goes an hour every day.
Yeah.
Just to get some more views on a video, which, you know, for me starting out on this, I need as many views as I can get.
Exactly.
You know, so I'm sort of leveraged by that to a degree. I'm like, fuck, like I don't want to spend an hour on TikTok. I know it's detrimental. I don't want to sit there for an hour, but I get stuck there.
I find it like so funny. Every now and then I'll check the algorithms in my Instagram and see I'm funny, you know, like, so I've sat on, like, you know, I could probably have heaps more followers on it. Like, I really don't give a fuck. You know, I've sat on like 10.1, 10.2 thousand, 10,000 followers now for like 2-3 years. But what's interesting, that hasn't grown. I mean, you'll see some weeks, and this goes to show you just how much ghosting and shit goes on there. And I don't care. I'm more interested about that going on than the realities of it. So when I do check, it'd be like in some weeks I'll like have 400 followers, but like lose 380.
Yeah.
But then, you know, occasionally when you look at those people that are like following, I'm like, there's just all these fucking ghost accounts.
Yeah, they're bots.
And I just don't give a flying fuck about like unfollows. Like, I'm like, see you later, I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I think so many people, when you look at social media, and especially like young people, where they're so focused on, you know, they just want followers. See, which is the exact wrong, and that's what's fucking with their heads. So they don't care who follows them, and they'll do anything to get those followers. And then when you look at the sexualization of some of it, and especially with young girls, like, it's just fucking horrible.
Oh,
You know, of what they feel like they have to post. You know, like, imagine if I had like good tits and fucking good G-string ass, like, man, I'd have 100,000 fucking followers.
get it out. Hey.
Like,
See what happens.
But you look at, and that's the thing with all these Gold Coast chicks and all this, just like every one of them, I'm like, like, that's your profile. Like, there's no fucking intelligence in it. There's no personality in it. There's no this. There's no that.
So
and I feel that really, like, unfortunate for them, that they feel like, what are you getting out of, you know, just doing that every day? Like your ass and your tits don't change day to day, but that's all your profile is. And you know, that's just a classic case of like, like what, as a society, like, you know what I mean? And there's literally like hundreds of thousands of them on there. So what makes you special or unique? You know, whereas someone who's on there and, you know, talking about this or doing that or, you know, demonstrating any type of fucking like intellect, you know, or something aspiring, you know, that's what I'm about. You know, they're the only sort of people, you know, like that I follow now.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it's just shit. But when you haven't got that mindset to differentiate that, as you know, then the others, you know, they're following all these other people, and that's where it becomes like so negative and you know, counterproductive for so many people. Because one, they're wasting time, they're filling their head full of shit, like literally. Yeah, they're developing all these like psychological disorders on how they think they should look. Like that thing I posted the other day, the latest trend now for young girls is all this fucking vaginal surgery.
What?
Yeah, because they want it to getting plastic surgery in their vaginas, so they look like some vagina that they've seen over here. That, you know, there's this perfect little vagina. Like seriously.
Lord.
So that's the latest, biggest thing. Like it's in mainstream media, like news.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how does that fucking come about? Yeah, and these are young girls. It's just like, to me, it's just so much of this stuff, man. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. It's tragic. I've got a little niece. She's going to grow up in that.
And that's what worries me, you know, is like, you know, myself and Sammy have talked about, you know, whether we have children soon and that, you know, like I'm an old man now, but, you know, I'd still probably like to, you know, go through that process again. But, you know, one of my biggest fears now is literally like bringing people into this world, and like it shouldn't be like that. Yeah, because I just don't see, you know, I don't have the confidence to like where this world's going. Not when again, like I was saying earlier, when you look at, you know, how disproportionately left and crazy it's become over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Like it's fucking absurd. You know, the stuff that's going on. So, yeah, if you're thinking about bringing a family into this world, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah. I had a mate of mine on a few weeks ago, and he had brought up a really interesting point. We don't seem to have, like, particularly in Australia, but Western society in general, and like white Western society, we don't seem to have any sort of coming of age rituals. If you look at like Aboriginals or, you know, American Indians, pick a culture, Africans, whatever, they've all got sort of these set ingrained rituals that they go through at a certain point, which really clearly delineates you're no longer a child, you're now a man, and you need to, you know, take up X amount of responsibility within society. But we don't have anything like that. Like the closest we've got is schoolies. You know, you just go on and get drank and try and shag whoever's
benders and shag as many chicks or shag as many dudes or whatever as you can. It's fucking It's there's myself and Sammy. I can't remember how I come up. We were talking the other night, and that's right. I was talking about this truck stop. I stop at every time when I travel back up, and surrounded by these Indians, and they're so polite. They make all the best food. And we started to talk about that and just how some of these other cultures. And I think that's the other thing as Australians. You know, we could all be doing so much better if our families like had the family bond and systems that some of these other cultures do. So they're like, how do all these other cultures fucking become so wealthy so fast? Because they all work, right? All that money gets pooled. And then they all pay off that house. They all live in that house. That house is paid off in like fucking 5 years. Then the next senior person, they buy their house. Half the family go and live there. Then the same. Pool all the money. That house is paid off. Then the next house. You know, so you imagine if we do that, what do? We're like, everyone goes off on their own, gets their own fucking mortgage, tries to, you know, do the best they can, and, you know, like no one ever pays their house off.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's parts of other cultures that we could actually learn, you know, like so much from, you know, that do things, you know, so much better. You know, like don't get me wrong, I love Australia and everything else, but, you know, you're right. It's like, you know, there are things that we could do, you know, so much better to get ourselves so much further ahead, especially when you're looking at cost of living and everything else, you know, that we don't. And then our parents, you know, they don't give a fuck about that. they buy a brand new 4-wheel drive and a $100,000 caravan and just fuck off, and then and you're just watching your inheritance fucking going inside diesel tanks. And they send you all these pictures of where they're around the country. Like, fuck, how the fuck's it going to help me?
Oh, fucking so true. Oh, mate, it's a crazy world we live in. This journey of life it's an adventure. It's an adventure. At least we have to laugh about it. It's probably going to be a good point to take a little bit of a break.
You want a break? Cool.
Yeah, we'll have a break, have a drink. We'll let the cameras unheat. We'll be back in a minute. All right, we're back. We've had a piss. We've had a drink. So I understand you've got a couple of bronze stars from the States from your time and deployments. Can you walk me through what they were for, how you got them, sort of the circumstances around that?
Yeah, sure. So in 2008, we'll go to the first one. So in 2006, I was with, I deployed first of all with Delta Company as part of the SOTG. And as it's been gone over laboriously in other podcasts, but the short of it all, there was a discrepancy with myself, or not with myself, sorry, but myself and our platoon commander, so me and JT. And anyway, a whole heap of shit happened with the squadron that was there at the time. Anyway, that put me transferred out of the company unfairly and unjustly, because what was all said was not true. But we'll just park all that. Anyways, then Mark Smutty, he was the CEO at the time, and he'd been concocting this other plan down at Bagram to get me embedded into what was known as the task force. So the task force is the JSOC element. That they have a JSOC element, as in Joint Special Operations Command. So it's the Tier 1 headquarters that sits above, organisations like CAG, which is Delta Force, and Dev Group, which is SEAL Team 6. They have an element of, FBI, CIA, 160th, then the fixed wing component. So basically every element in America has either an interagency component there, when you're talking FBI, CIA, and some other organisations. And then every service has a component there as well. So they, had a task force in Iraq for, a protracted period of time. Then they had a task force in Afghanistan for a protracted period of time. And those task forces operate, completely outside of essentially every chain of command in the country, and have all their own dedicated assets. And I mean dedicated. So they can completely do any type of mission, absolutely independently. In 2006, very fortunately, I was attached to them, and that was the first Australian attachment we had, much to the dismay of many people. Anyway, we'll park that as well. So I was attached with them, and then throughout those next whatever's left, 5 or 6 months. So I did a month or two there with the what's called TF Red, which is a Ranger component in them. Then went across to the Dev Group component. So they have a couple of task forces within the task force. So there would be missions that the Rangers would go and do on their own. There'd be missions that Dev Group and or CAG would go and do on their own. And then there would be missions that we would do together. And then there would be other missions that would be more specific and specialised with just certain other government agencies and elements. And I was only ever on a couple of those. But they're even sort of more refined, so to speak. And you're talking really low numbers too. So the stakes are a lot higher, where there may only be 10 or 15 of you, and half of them are very, very specialists, depending on what you're doing. It was an absolutely amazing time, because especially I went from a platoon sergeant role at TK, and we just left, or just completed. So I bounced straight from Backlights, which is the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne in 2006. So we just spent 2 or 3 months in Melbourne for the build-up, and then for the games which was great. Just like the training and operational component of a counterterrorism activity and exposure of that sort of significance. And that was, I think, my first. We'd done a couple of smaller CT operations for when POTUS would come out.
President of the United States, for those playing at home.
Thank you. I do remember when I first heard of that, and they're like, POTUS, and everyone's like, I'm going POTUS. I'm like, fuck's POTUS?
Is that an STD? Who's got POTUS? Did you give me POTUS?
I'm like, were we in Thailand last week? Anyway, no, but yeah, it was like, President of the United States. I was like, oh, cool. Anyway, but yeah, that was the first big one of those. But anyway, back to Afghanistan. So then, I got to play with those guys for a while, and it was just, it was absolutely, most certainly the highlight of my career, or one of, like up there. And it was just, like operator to operator, to be honest, there wasn't a lot of difference. Australia's best operators are as good as any operators in the world. I don't subscribe to this, they're better, this better, and everything else is better. Each country, noting that, I've worked with German, French, like most, special operations units around the world I had some sort of interaction with, I went to Japan and worked with theirs. I've went to States several times. I did a detachment with the German Special Forces and GSG-9, which is their special police unit, and then their special forces unit. So I spent a couple of months over there. So I was quite fortunate, I guess, when I look back. But the only reason I say that is, because I'm very qualified, and not being arrogant about it, but I am very qualified to compare.
Mm.
And when you look at all the different countries in the world, they're all different because they're different countries. But I certainly don't subscribe to, this, who's the best and whatnot. They're all, as in all the credible units and main lead countries have all got absolutely excellent operators. So it wasn't so much the operators, it was more so, and especially with the Americans, because there isn't, even most of the European countries, not even most, they can't just compare. So it's the dedication, as I've explained many times, what is the difference? It's the dedication of asset, and it is the level of operation that you're working on. So we would have, a target board, and there might be 20 or 30 names on it, and they are the highest level insurgent commanders across, the 5-6 insurgent networks, whether it's Haqqani, Pakistan Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan Taliban, HIG network, like whatever network it was, it's all their top players. And then every single night when they go through what's being targeted, all the machinations behind the scenes, all the different agencies would determine who has got, or who has got any fidelity, and then who we have any fidelity on, who is even possible or likely to be targetable, that night, and if not that night, the next night. So we're working in these fairly tight loops. So whenever they would get, a ping on someone, so get some sort of clarity as to where they were positioned through, a various array of intelligence sources, that's then they would start to develop, as it was referred to, that target pack. So then they would spend, whether it be hours, days, or it might be weeks developing that target pack. And then early every afternoon, we'd all come into the JOC, the Ops Centre, and it'd be just discussed, what's on the radar, what might come up, and then more or less, at that last moment of darkness at whatever time, we'd either be forward stage somewhere. And again, this is when you're talking about, the highest level of asset support. So, they might fly us somewhere in the fixed wing Hercules, which are their own SO. I can't remember which Air Force, as in the terminology for what their special operations component is. But anyway, they might fly somewhere. Then the helicopters might come later, and or this might happen, or they might forward stage the helicopters there, refuel them, then fly us there. It's just whatever it took to get all the assets where they needed to get them, and then to get us there, and then you might wait there a day, you might wait there for an hour, So it was all of those things, which was so impressive, and watching their intelligence network, and they're just so much more experienced at it, and because all the assets were theirs, so that fusion of the intelligence down through the enabling all the assets to affect the operation through to what we were given as operators and landing on the ground. The information we'd have, the pictures we'd have, and everything else on them. That was the difference, and it was just it was just crazy, and it was just great to just be running in those teams, as a shooter, as I had no responsibility. So I've gone from senior team commander and, on the counterterrorism at Acolyte through to a platoon sergeant deploying with Delta Company to now just being an operator in a team. So I just love that, because it was just I had nothing to worry about except really just do my job. And because I'd just come off the tools, doing CT build up for so long, your personal individual skills were still like A1. So I've just fitted into the teams and blended like seamlessly. And it's great, and also because you can blister, or as we did, blister onto some of their technology in regards to, fucking ditched our NVGs, whatever shit we were using at the time,
The old monocle.
and these other things, and you're running around with like some of their gear, and you're just like, fuck me, this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because we were still in those early days behind a little bit. Even our special forces, who as no pun intended, but generally always had something better than the rest of the army.
Definitely.
And sometimes we need it, but other times, the army should have a lot of the stuff we had.
Yeah.
Which I think they've caught up a lot recently, but.
We all had that joke that as soon as we got multicams, you guys were going to go back to the old jelly beans just to be different and cool.
Yeah. It's an evolution or a de-evolution, isn't it? Well, on that joke, there was when the multicams came out across the big army, as in the US Army, and I remember them, and then we started walking around wearing tiger stripes.
Yeah.
And for those who know, like, tiger stripes are what they were in Vietnam. So they literally do just like take the piss, but they justified it saying, these Benny the Blessed Afghanistan, and it's just like, it's the biggest fucking joke ever.
Yep.
But that's it was an amazing experience, and I learnt so much out of it, and came back and tried to pass a lot of those TTPs on, the tactics, techniques, and procedures back to the unit on just how they were conducting operations, because they'd been conducting operations at that level for so long, and between two Commando and SASR, irrespective of whatever unit, and it's like, as it's well come out now, the conflict and abrasiveness between those two units had become so like negative and counterproductive for both of them. That's well documented now, and it's just quite unfortunate. It was only towards the end a lot of that started to ease up, but it was still there. And the reality is, neither of us, really totally knew, our own capabilities or what we were, doing, or where we were going at that time, and how we should best operate together. As they saw it, we should be, operating down these couple of rungs. They need to be operating up these couple of rungs. But that was the exposure and understanding that I got when I saw how others were doing it. It was just like, well, the modelling that you're talking about, doesn't actually work because you haven't got those assets. So you can't say you're like this unit when you don't even have fucking dedicated aircraft. Like you're borrowing and stealing for like a couple of Black Hawks to go and do some, raid in the middle of the daytime. That's just not how others are operating. So it was seeing that and then trying to, as I say, bring that back to the unit of, where and how we should be going. And then I think over the next couple of years, we did that like really well. But yeah, they were, as I've already said, it was just a absolutely amazing, eye-opening, experience. But that's the key component of, seeing how, just how they operate at that level and how much support, like we got, like no matter where it was or what time of the day, night it was, we were put on that X every time, like irrespective of, the conditions, how much we were being shot at, what was going on. They just phenomenally know how to, operate at like another level. But importantly, with all the assets and fully enabled. And unfortunately, we just never ever got there. The Australian SOTG as operators, we were there, and we operated excellently with what we had. But if we had our own Chinooks, our own Blackhawks, our own few Reapers, and a couple of other like key enabling assets, we would have been much more effective. Not much more effective. But yeah.
So what were the actions then that you ended up getting Bronze Star?
The Bronze Star with Valor device, essentially what they do is it reads. There's a cumulative set of actions that it reads under. So I think there were several occasions, some of them read, just always, going into harm's way or going things first. And there was just on several different occasions where, you don't really think about it like at the time as in that I'm specifically, doing something, but you would just, take the lead or, but, always taking that step forward, always, going towards the fight. There was, I don't know how to really explain it, because like I said, the citation reads over several different circumstances and different operations that we did, but it essentially just it's a cumulative effect is the easiest way I can explain it. Of always just taking the lead and going forward. I mean, there's times when you're in those firefights where I guess it's not to turn around and take cover of something. It's not about that, but it's you could have opportunities to just like pause a second or to do this, and there always needs to be that one guy that directly in in that nanosecond takes the lead. That guy that steps through the door, that shoots that guy first or does this first. So I think like I was saying, it's just a cumulative effect of those events and those events being recognized. And when I look back now, and also because it was such a while ago now, and as I'm sitting now and I'm just remembering things, it's like you every single night you're going out, like you're doing this stuff like every other night or every night, and some nights you would do follow on targets, so you'd go and then and that's the other thing, the speed that they can evolve, so you'd gain whatever level of intelligence off that target. As in when you're doing what was called the SSE, which is a sensitive site exploitation. So once everyone's neutralized or captured, so whether killed or captured, and those moments afterwards, we'd have a very finite time, because then people would know we're there, and they very much take it, extremely seriously how long they stay on the ground, because of here then the risk starts increasing. So it's about exposure. So would be like, okay, birds coming on. You might have 5 minutes, you might have 10 minutes, you might have 3 minutes, and also how you're getting off. Because it might be the same helicopters coming back to grab you. They might have went into a loiter wheel. You might be getting extracted by some low visibility Hiluxes. It's a number of different things, and they continually change that, obviously, because then that again increases your if you increase the randomness of how you insert and extract, then obviously it just doesn't lead on to the enemy on what that template might be at all the time. It was definitely an exciting time. There's some things that I saw and did that I've never repeated and never will. And then there's a lot of it that I've talked about. But they're a really, really good bunch of guys. And it was hard too, because with that particular squadron I was with, which was Gold Squadron, they were the ones that were shot down a couple of years later in Extortion 17. So there's actually, and that wasn't like just like our companies when they go back and do other trips, but a lot of people had changed in that. But there was also a good half a dozen or so of the guys that I worked with. So between there and the few other guys that were killed in Iraq later, and the couple that have unfortunately suicided, there's literally only a handful of us left from from that whole group. So especially after that particular accident where the whole Chinook was shot down, so every single person that Chinook was killed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people in the veteran community know of that. That sort of, yeah, that's a crazy amount to lose in one hit.
It's unreal.
It's horrendous. Being that we are sort of in the military point of this, do you remember the first person you positively killed?
I think I've been asked this before, and I don't think I do. And the reason I say it like that, so I can remember the first couple like up close, but others because, and I guess when you go back to your point there where you've said positively killed, so I guess yes, the first that you've positively killed, yes, but then there's others before that you're pretty sure you might have killed. But I guess there's, as I've explained it before, there's killing people like up close. For me, certainly, but I think for most, is definitely different to killing anyone, further away. I mean, there's several people I've killed like up close, and I can still, not being all weird about it, but I can still see those people now. But out of the however many other people I've killed, like I don't really remember them. So I think, when it's, well, as I say, it's up close and personal. When it's up close and personal, then it becomes up close and personal. And I think also, there's some other people that sort of, I don't know, just stay with you. There's a one of the HVIs is in high value targets when we're out right on the Iranian border, so out in Western Afghanistan, and we just finished clearing the house and killed a few people, and then I could hear. So I was standing at the base of the stairs, or the stairs there, and Heath, I think one of the other fellas, at the bottom of the stairs. And when you're under goggles, it's always when I look back, it's kind of weird, because you're giving each other these little signals and nods, and just watching that back shadow of the green on their eyes to see what they're sort of. Anyway. I thought I heard something. We quickly worked out that those stairs, which he had his back towards, and I think this is one thing that was mentioned in one of the citations, because I pushed him out of the way and sort of gone up to the stairs and cleared. And there's his missus, as in the HVI's wife, was, as we later found out, I didn't know at the time who it was just leaning over the top of those stairs, like about to empty a magazine, down into us. Anyway, so I shot her, but she sort of come like tumbling down the stairs, So yeah, like I said, it's just, I think it's more, when you're, the circumstances surrounding it, that sort of like sticks in your head more. And there's another one, like I remember shooting someone like probably the fucking closest, like they're like literally a meter away, like as in I was shocked that they were there when I went in this door, and my muzzle's like literally half in their head, and they were bending down a little bit, and their head's like just completely like split in half, and I think things like that just stay with you because the close proximity, as opposed to other firefights we're in where you're like shooting at people, and they might be 100 or 200 meters away, or 50 or 70 meters away, or whatever, and you see them drop and you see them fall, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I killed that person, but like you don't fucking know, as opposed to when they're like right there and you're literally like shooting them in the face. And the other one is, the younger people. I think they stay with you. Had a particular circumstance, on one night where, this basically the whole family almost just kept coming out picking up the same weapon, and between the one or two of us that were inside the compound and the roof team, obviously every time they do that, then that person would get shot, And that ended up with, I think there was like 2 or 3 kids lying there, 1 or 2 women and a guy or 2 or whatever it was, I can't remember. But like, something like that stays with you because it's like, I don't know. Obviously, you get desensitized by it all a little bit, but, when you've got as we call them, a fighting age male who's an obvious aggressor, and then you have, a female which just goes against your grain a little bit, or, a adolescent, like a younger girl or younger boy, it's those instances. I think they just affect you more or stay with you, because it's just, I mean, it's not natural to kill anyone as it is, but when you're going through your training, you're always being trained to kill that man, the enemy. So then when you're in a predicament when the enemy no longer fits this stereotype that's sort of ingrained in you, and I think it's for those reasons, and again, quite frankly, just because it's not natural, that they stick with you for a longer period of time, and there's just nothing really that ever makes it sort of right. But
does the weight of that hit you immediately, or is it something that you've kind of only really sort of started to hit you later as you've come out of that world and you start to decompress? And I think the longer we're out, the more human we become, for lack of a better term. Is it the weight hits you immediately upon doing that, or is it more of a later stage?
No, it's it's definitely a good question. It's definitely later. Like even sitting here now, like I can feel I'm getting emotional. I mean, obviously, but if you ask me, when I've probably talked about it in other podcasts, is I haven't feel it affected me. So certainly at the time, I don't remember doing anything at the time where it would affect you. And you're so hardwired at the time, you're fucking programmed. You'd go out every night, or every other night when you would kill a few people or lots of people or whatever. And then, you just go back, have a shower, go to sleep. Have a think about that. That's fucking really not normal. So, I think everybody starts to unravel or think about it. So whatever term we want to use, the decompress, uncompress, blah, 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 at different times. And I think those times are just when we start to allow it. And most of the time, that's probably a subconscious moment in our psychology. As I don't think, people who have done or experienced lots of trauma go, okay, now I'm going to, think about that. I think it's just a time in your life, and when everything else, because, let's face it, your psychology is when it's on point, is guarding you. So we can use whatever terminology you want, like shelving, you put it in a shelf, you put it in a drawer, basically that moment, not that it's necessarily trauma. Trauma is different, but this could be part of your trauma, the fact that you did that to those people. But whatever incident it is that your mind at that time doesn't want to accept or talk about, puts it over here. Just like people with childhood trauma. They could be 20 years old, they could be 30 years old, and then next minute they're fucking wigging out about something happened when they were 6. So I think we just park it wherever we need to, and then when our mind is ready and we're ready because we're in a better place, or you've seen some professionals and they encourage you to start dealing with some of it because your bucket's full, and if you don't unfill it a bit, then it's going to fucking overflow. So I think there's definitely a couple of aspects to that, and I've always found that quite interesting. Of how different we all are in dealing with different things. As I've explained before, me and you can both be in the exact same car accident or the same shooting incident or the same this, and you can be totally okay and I can totally not be, but then later on I won't be, and then you will be. It just we all go through these different cycles, and that's the whole thing about the transition, as we call it, of when we leave defence or whatever. That every single person is completely different. Some people transition seamlessly, but then 6 years later turn into fucking retards.
Yeah,
and then some people can't transition and then turn out really well. So, I talk to a lot of people, through media, on the back channels, and I'll get on the phone with them, if they're, going through whatever difficulty, and I just find that, that a lot of people think that there's this cookie cut. They're like, oh, well, I've been out 3 months now and I'm, I still feel like this, or I'm not doing this. It's like, well, it might take you 6 months or 9 months. You know, it's like you can't compare yourself to anybody else, and it'll sort of just happen. Yet there are things you can do to help yourself along that way, but I think we all need to just go through the process, and the process. What I'm saying is, very individual and different every time. So.
Absolutely. I remember I watched a doco. It's an interview about 2 hours long with he was one of the Marines in not Omaha Beach, fighting the Japanese in the Pacific during World War II, an American fella. I have never seen a human being with less PTSD or depression, like at 98 years old or whatever, did not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And he was like 16 in war. Like, you've been a lot more hectic war than I've been in, but like that war was a whole different spectrum. And he didn't care. Like nothing fazed him at all. He's like, oh, well, just did what I did, whatever.
Yeah.
Not a second thought, no qualms or anything.
And that's the other thing. Like, it's funny, like, everybody is affected, like differently as well. And like the other thing we can't, shouldn't do is, compare our own experiences to other people's, experiences. But how, like, and that's all I'm saying is, how we all, deal with it all and transition and whatever is, like different for everybody. I just don't subscribe to the fact that, when people are like, oh yeah, that didn't affect me at all. I mean, as soon as I hear someone say that, especially like that, I'm like, obviously that's just the fucking curtain that they've got on at the moment. But, and I think also, just need to be very careful, because the veteran community, as much as there's a lot of stuff out there, there's still so much like negativity. So how people like understand, PTSD and different things, because it affects us, as a community when people are trying to get jobs and do this and do that. So I always try and, keep more of a positive spin about it all, and, look at, what veterans can bring to your business, and all the good that, veterans do when they get out, all the, guys and girls that have got out and started this business or doing this or working in this position in that company, as opposed to the people that might not be traveling so well. And then, I also believe, there's a large percentage of out of those people that might not be traveling so well that haven't really done a lot to help themselves. There's people that are sincerely and genuinely hurting, be honest, at a stage where they need, professional, intervention. But then, there's other people that, have put themselves, in a predicament more so through, substance abuse or laziness or, this or that, you know what I mean? Like the first thing we all need to do, you can have as much help as you fucking want, but you must help yourself, and like friends of mine that have like taken their lives and stuff, it's just, like it's just always a heartbreaking fucking thing. 'Cause it's like, but that's what I say. Like if you called someone, but like that's what people don't understand. When you're feeling like that, you're not going to get on the phone. You lie to your friends. Like, how you going? Yeah, I'm going well, mate. But they're not fucking going well. But that's the key thing and what's so difficult to understand. But if you don't take those first steps yourself, whether that's seeing someone, telling a friend or whatever, that's, just seems to be those first, major steps of spiraling down is when you start to like hide everything and deny everything. And, if you can't be honest with yourself, then you're certainly not going to be fucking honest to others.
Yeah.
And then from there, everything just gets worse and worse until you feel like you're in this black hole.
I think there's also this thought when people are in that position where they're in a dark spot and they need some help. There's this thought. I had to do a speech on this a few weeks back about men's mental health. There's this thought that when I'm feeling dark and I need to reach out, I'm at that point I need to reach out, that I have to call you and suddenly dump all my shit on you straight up.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, I don't think, what has to occur. It's that connection with the tribe, I think, is one of those things that we lose, especially us veterans. We lose that almost the second we leave. but for wider society, it also happens. It's just a little bit more subdued and subtle. But you can call, like if I'm feeling shit, call you and see how you're doing. Do something outside myself and go, yeah, Wes, how are you, man? Like, are you good? And maybe talk about yours. And if I can get you even to open up, it might lead itself to me opening up. And then we're actually having a real dialogue about something that's very important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you do that too, certainly for myself, whenever you always feel better if you put it this way, you always feel better if you know you're helping others.
Yes.
And I think, a lot of veterans, or people actually, it's got nothing to do with veterans. That's again, a fact because it gives you a sense of purpose. Like when we look at, what drives us and gives us this, it's like purpose, hope. As soon as you lose purpose, as in like, what am I doing in this fucking life? And as soon as you don't have hope, man, you're fucking so much on a, fast track to downhill.
Yeah.
Hope is such an essential thing, and our purpose, waking up and knowing I've got to do this, this, and this each day. Yeah, and that's the other problem, well, not the other problem, but one of the big problems with transitioning is, when you get out, then immediately, a chunk of purpose, if not all of it, sometimes is like lost until they regain their next sense of purpose. So whether that's their next full-time job or their next like little mission in life. And that's, as we now well know, and it's been well documented through the Royal Commission and everything, so it's that period there, that they must have or quickly regain purpose and have that hope. And it's the people that don't or can't, it's where the spiral begins. But, again, as I've said earlier, I just think, in general, there's just too much like negativity portraying, the veteran community about, PTSD and a misunderstanding of it, and you got to like break it down, post-traumatic stress. So anyone who's had like, anything significant in there, if a lady who's had a couple of miscarriages, she's got, or a lot of them would then have PTSD because that's traumatic. People who've been in serious car accidents, traumatic. People who've seen a loved one die of cancer, traumatic, but it just gets sort of tagged on the veteran community. So as a veteran, as a generalization, you're deploying to these areas. And again, you don't need to be, in some gunfighter role. If you look at the trauma that came out of places like Rwanda, when I was a young soldier, I went to Somalia. And, we weren't doing, there wasn't a lot of like combat in Somalia, but fuck me, like the death, and deprivation and famine and just horrific scenes, that you'd see and people beaten and all that. So it's a complete different type of trauma. And that's, the point I'm making, that I think some people don't, understand that at all. Like, PTSD is someone who's got, experienced trauma and is dealing with it. So it doesn't mean that you can't be effective in a job role function of whatever that may be. And that's, what disappoints me sometimes about the community, when there's people that are just constantly banging on this like negative channel about, PTSD, which, sounds like they were all, got this thing that we can't get over. And that's just not the case. Like I've said before, and I'll continue to say again, there's, thousands and thousands and thousands of veterans that leave the, Defence Force and, move on through their life to be, excellent, citizens, excellent family members, excellent professionals in whatever job, and contribute, to society more so than fucking anyone else would. And that we shouldn't sort of, dwell on this, on the rest of it. We should acknowledge it. We should continue to support them that the best way we can, but not to dwell so much on the negativity of it. And I just find sometimes that happens a little bit too much.
Yeah. So let's just speak about loss for a second. I know, we've both lost plenty of mates to their own hand, which is tragic. Suicide is a huge thing, but particularly in Afghanistan, the SOTG element took the brunt of the casualties and the brunt of the loss. How has that sort of affected you, and how did you deal with the loss of brothers over there?
Yeah, good question. I think, loss. We all deal with it differently. And I think, one of the things that I first realised, and this probably isn't in the right order, but is survivor's guilt. So when, you're involved in a traumatic incident and someone's either, severely hurt or killed, and especially if you're close to them, you have this, and I didn't even know that term. It was a term that I learnt through counselling, but, you basically don't, you feel like you don't want to die and you don't wish that you were dead, but you're like, why are they gone and why am I still here? So I think that was one of the first, and like I said, not in order, but a big thing that I, realised at whatever stage it was of why you were feeling, so bad about certain things. And it's that. But in regards to loss in general, I think, unfortunately, there was a time, I don't think that was that we were desensitized. It was, again, that you're just compartmentalizing it and you seem to be moving ahead or around it all too quickly. And then the second component is how we deal with it. I think quite often, not that there's a right or wrong way, but by sitting around and getting fucking absolutely paralytic drunk or, doing this or doing that certainly doesn't help. But unfortunately, they're the common ways or coping mechanisms that we would turn to, which as you learn fast, actually generally only makes things worse. And then often, then another, incident to do to yourself or someone else might arise out of that. But, every single person, like I know, that was close to me that I've lost, essentially, I don't think so. I dealt with them all differently. So I think it very much depends on who they were and the moment in the time and how close you actually were to them. None of them are easy. But what I would say is, and what I've said to many others is that you just, there is no, like what I've seen before, there is no right or wrong way, and that everybody deals with grief differently. And all, that I ever now do, when something happens again within the community is just check in on people, just make sure people, are travelling okay and not dealing with it, in an excessively negative way. I had a good mate just before Anzac Day kill himself, and ex-1RR soldier. And, it was after the funeral. He was actually cremated in Canada. But anyway, we held a memorial service for him in Victoria because he was cremated over there. And that's where he did it. And it was after that memorial service, that a few of the guys, and actually one of them on that night, after certainly an excessive amount of alcohol, was starting to sort of, say some pretty negative things. And, that's, the key moment, I think, when we need to really, watch people. It seems to sometimes can have a domino effect. And I'm talking about a suicide event there, but even in other cases, because of the guilt, I've seen some guys, I won't mention who they are because they've been known to the community, but after some guys were killed, I've seen other guys just be on like a roller coaster for fucking years of alcohol, drugs, and other shit. So they using all the wrong coping mechanisms to try and I know what they're doing, because I've gone through components of myself. So when people are doing that, you're trying to get rid of pain. So you're hurting and you're trying to numb pain. But through that process, you only fucking making matters worse. Like I know that for a fact from things I've done myself and tried to deal with. It doesn't make anything better. So you might get momentary, lapses, because you've literally numbed the fuck out of yourself, through whatever mechanism you're using. There's certainly no easy way, and it doesn't get easier. But it's more, like I said, on how you deal with it. So now I try and just look at how others are dealing with it, and you've got sort of a bit more experience yourself, and you know that you know what people commonly might try and do or what they're going to do, and just talk to them or talk them out of it or talk them through it. And just you need to pull the community and the brotherhood, to use a cliche saying, together and tighter. But we saw like a lot of loss, through the years, and then several more shortly thereafter. There was sort of just sort of a spate of suicides there for a little while. But yeah, it was pretty heavy toll on the unit. Through a period of time there, most certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, I know you've been here quite a while now. It's getting late. You got a long drive home. I'll get you with one more question. What piece of advice would you give to someone? It could be your younger self, it could be just someone younger in general. It doesn't have to be military or anything in specific. Just a piece of advice to help somebody do better at life or get to where they want to go.
Good one, Jake. I wish you asked me at the start of the night. No, I think, when I look back, so I guess the way I'd answer that is I look back at the things, and I won't go into like all of what they are at the moment, that I regret or predicaments I've got myself into. So I guess, my advice would be, don't make decisions when you're under the influence of anything. And when I mean under the influence of anything, so if you're heavily emotive, or heavily intoxicated or anything like that. So if I look at all the worst fucking things I've done in my life, or most stupid fucking things I've done in my life, they're under the influence of either heated emotion or too much alcohol or something. So I'd always say my advice to anyone would be not to do that. And even now, like something happened last week, I'll just wait till the next morning. So one, I won't, resort to, a bottle or anything, like I avoid all that now. Like, don't get me wrong, I still love to have a drink. But when you're dependent on anything, recognize that you're dependent on it, which would be another good point. So don't make any, decisions, whatever they may be. Just take a breather, whether that's half a day or whatever. And also, but understand when you're like that, that's the most likely time that you're going to do something you regret. So you just need to be extra cautious, and we all do it and we all go through it. But like I said, when I look back at some of the most fucking stupid shit I've done, it's always been, around those times. So I'm either heavily emotive or I'm intoxicated. And, you can say that's all part of, like growing up, but, I think that's where we need to be like most careful. And also, probably lastly, through those times is identify when others are. Like, I don't necessarily forgive people when they do stupid shit, but I'm like, if they're either going through something or I know that they're, drunk or easily upset, that's where we need to, put that safety net out, but also encourage them not to. I think too often, and when I look back when we were all like a little bit younger and stupider, it's like, let's get on the booze, mate, let's do this. It's just, it like just never fucking works out well. Like never works out well. So yeah, that would be, which might be some pretty simple basic advice, but certainly when I look back at my life, it's just, avoid those moments, avoid those times, and just always take time when you can to get your head straight before you make those decisions. Because, as the old saying goes, you're not thinking straight. So don't make the decision then.
Yeah.
Give yourself some time, give yourself a moment. And use sounding boards. Never be too proud to, call someone, call a mate, and just say, hey, what do you think about this? No matter what it might be. But I think that's the other thing sometimes, especially us personality types, we're just, too proud about things to even ask someone their advice. And especially guys, we're just not good at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my couple of bits of life advice.
That is some sage advice, mate. I have no doubt there'll be at least one person that'll take something positive away from that.
I hope so.
So yeah, thanks, mate. Thank you for driving all the way down here. I know you're a very busy man. You've got a lot going on, and appreciate you taking the time to sit down and bare your soul to a degree, be vulnerable, and I think there's going to be some people to get something positive out of this. So
thank
mate.
You, man. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks,
nice,
Jacob.
Thanks. Catch you later, lids.
Thanks, mate.